have fun, right? Because what the hell is the point of this show if you're not having fun? If you're not having fun. And listen, there are three comedians I really want to talk about because YouTube comedy. I know we talked a little bit about white boy humor a couple weeks ago, right? We talked about Trevor Wallace and we talked about Jimmy Tatro. And if you guys haven't seen that episode, I believe it's episode 22 or 21 that we talked about Jimmy Tatro. He's in the title, so you can go look it up. But yeah, we talked a little bit about YouTube comedy, but we talked about more so a subgenre of YouTube comedy, a different, a more of sketch comedy, more of acting and all of that stuff. So I wanted to talk about kind of the more traditional stand-up side of comedy and how that has changed, right? Because obviously, since Dave Chappelle was coming up, things have changed. The definition of making it in comedy used to be you got a half an hour special on Comedy Central, or you got an hour-long special on HBO, or even on Netflix. But that necessarily isn't the biggest deal in the world anymore. But in huge, what? Netflix specials are still huge. People release stand-up comedy on Netflix all the time. Okay, so how are comedians developing this popularity, you think? It's through YouTube. YouTube is becoming the new place where comedians are releasing specials, they're releasing work, they're releasing clips, and all of these things. And it's becoming a way for them to develop an audience that they probably never otherwise had. So let me explain what I mean. There are three comedians I really want to talk about in this particular sort of YouTube comedian space. There's three. Their names are Akash Singh, Nimesh Patel, and Andrew Schulz. Andrew Schulz is like the biggest one of them all. He sort of, was the OG YouTube comedian in a lot of ways in terms of like a traditional stand-up comic, like developing his audience through YouTube, all of that. But let's get into Akash Singh for a second. Then we'll get into Schulz, I think, and then we'll do Nimesh. Okay, so Akash Singh, who the hell is this dude? I didn't honestly know who this guy was until about 3 years ago, and I watched a show called Brown Nation on Netflix. It is very whack. I wouldn't recommend it if you're not into like really weird type of humor. If you're Indian, you should go watch it. It's probably one of the more underrated like brown TV shows out there. But the guy Akash Singh was like a sort of supporting actor in it. He was pretty funny, but like he was forgettable, right? It was like very early on in his career. I remember looking him up, and he was like a lowly stand-up comedian at that point. Like, not very many followers, any of that. Then he got on this podcast with his best friend, Andrew Schulz, and they do a show called Flagrant 2, which you guys have probably heard of. It's one of the more popular comedy podcasts in the country. And he really recently released a YouTube special called Bring Back Apu, which has like 1 million followers within a week, or a million views within a week. It's doing really, really well. YouTube comedy is absolutely dope. And now, because basically every stand-up comedian, before you used to have to go to the club and perform live, right? And be like, oh, this is my piece. And then people would have to remember your name and then tell their friends by mouth and all of this stuff. Now you don't have to do that. Now you can record those shows that are happening at the club, put them on YouTube, put them on TikTok. People laugh, ha, 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 engage with it, share it to all their friends, put it in all the WhatsApp groups. And all of a sudden you have a base. You're building your base through social media, right? And so this is kind of like what Akash did. He released a lot of pieces through YouTube. He kind of got popular through Flagrant 2 as well, and being on that podcast and sort of, backpacking with, and not to, say he's bandwagoning off Andrew Schulz, but like, them two were friends, and Andrew Schulz brought his base of people and Akash brought his perspective of people. And, they kind of have a really good thing going with the pod. So that's good with them. And sort of, I've noticed that this YouTube special thing is really catching heat in that, like, there are a lot of comedians that are sort of dropping not hour-long specials necessarily, but like 20 to 40 minute specials of just like various work that they're doing with their comedy on YouTube, and just like collections of jokes. And they're doing super, super well. A lot of people are really liking it. It's kind of this new wave of things. Andrew Schulz did it like 4 years ago. I just didn't know about it. Now I've learned about it because of a podcast, which I'll talk about later. But Akash's new special, what's it called? Bring Back Apu, is fantastic. It's not for the faint of heart. So if you're like ultra woke, this is not going to be the special for you. He's great at like calling out the Indian community on their bullshit. And I respect that because we need more comedians that are not just going like you have the Hussins, right? You have different comedians who are like going to encourage that sort of behavior. And then you have other comedians who are kind of like the counter argument to it, right? Like, okay, hold up. There's a certain attitude, but have you thought about this? And like, why? And it's done in a really funny way. He has a bit about toilets, which I think is hilarious. And it's coming at it from like sort of an immigrant perspective, which I haven't seen in the scape of comedy recently. So I think that's really cool. Watch Bring Back Apu. I'll link that too. How about that? I'll link that down below as well. Really good social commentary on just a variety of issues going on within the world. Like I said, edgier type of humor for sure. All three of these guys are definitely like an edgier sort of humor, you know, little not politically correct, which is cool with me, but with some people it's not. And, you know, I think you need to reevaluate if it's not cool with you, because humor is supposed to be edgy and make you feel uncomfortable. Not for the faint of heart. But listen, Akash definitely has a big following. Like he's verified on Instagram. Like people know who he is. Flagrant 2. Like that's a big podcast. Like he's done shit with Andrew Schulz. Like people know who Akash Singh is. But he's gonna go. He's my bet. I'm putting my bet down. If I had to put money on the table and be like, who's the next brown comedian that's gonna blow up? It's either him or the other guy I'm going to talk about here, Nimesh Patel. Went and saw Nimesh live, fantastic. But Akash Singh I have my money on him. He's going to do big fucking things in this industry. He's funny as hell. He has a really unique type of humor, and he's good at what he does. And I think I'm confident in him. I think he's both him and Nimesh are definitely like my two that are like, okay, we gotta watch. Like they're close. So watch out because these guys are going mainstream real soon. You know, Netflix specials could be upcoming, and pretty soon the next time you see them could be in a theater. So you never know. You never know, guys. You never know. That's all I'm saying. But if I had to put a bet, it would be on them too. All right. But listen, Andrew Schulz, right? This next guy I wanted to talk about. He's way established. He's mad established. Like this dude has, you know, almost 2 mil on the Instagram. Like he's probably him and Hasan Minhaj are arguably at the same level. He's very, very big and he's doing theaters and whatnot. And he's one of the bigger comedians right now in the US, like one of the hotter comedian names. So I'm not even trying to act like I just discovered this fucking underground comedian. No. But I want to talk about him because he was sort of the OG of this whole YouTube comedian movement in that, like, he was one of the first people, and I learned this by listening to the Colin and Samir podcast. Shout out to Colin and Samir. Y'all are awesome, and y'all are, like, really doing amazing things. I also found Colin and Samir at 10,000 subscribers, so I did find them. They were a gold mine. You can ask my friends. But Andrew Schulz is sort of this OG of YouTube comedy. And he continues to try new things. That's what I like about him. He's sort of advancing that industry of stand-up from like just shows, just selling tickets at the comedy club to putting shit up online and doing all of these things. And he was sort of that first guy to get the ball rolling. So guys like Akash and Nimesh could, you know, continue and build their success off of this sort of model. And he's continuously changing the space, like the way he was discussing it with Colin and Samir. Great interview again. You should watch it. Andrew Schulz and Colin Samir. They talked a lot about his career and the different things that he could do with specials and whatnot, and the different things that he has done by posting crowd work and all of these things, and sort of how he adapted to the pandemic and through various rants and his also like different online content that he was experimenting with that was doing really well. And that online content, that pandemic stuff, landed him a Netflix special later last year. So listen, and he's also the head of Flagrant 2, which was with Akash that I referenced earlier. And he's absolutely hilarious. I have yet to watch Schulz Saves America, which is his Netflix special. I definitely have to go check that out. Again, not for like super, super woke people that are going to get sensitive. Super funny dude. Search him up on YouTube. He's got a lot of stand-up bits out there. The catalog is endless. He's got like 1.7 million subscribers. He's a big hit and highly recommend. So definitely go check out Andrew Schulz. And he's the OG. Netflix and HBO specials seemingly are not the ways to go anymore. And Schulz sort of talked about it on this show. Like you can build through Instagram and through YouTube and use sort of at the end, like the Netflix and HBO specials seem to be like the sort of like, oh, cherry on top social capital, ding, ding, ding. Like you have the asterisks, you sort of have the blue check of comedy, so to speak, right? And that's kind of where it's headed. And then I want to talk about Nimesh Patel. He's the last comedian that we're going to talk about here and then move on. I went and saw Nimesh live in San Francisco, and he was a ton of fun. Highly recommend if he's in your city, go follow him. I think his Instagram is Finding Nimesh. Super good at just like, and this, I got to see him live, so I think I have a different experience. He's very good at picking up on the crowd's vibes and like super, makes it like a very intimate performance in that, like, he's talking to crowd members. So it feels like, you're just chatting with him at a dinner party or something like that. So it's not necessarily like, a theater sort of stand-up production, which was more so what I saw with Hassan. And I saw those, and those are like theater shows. Those are like arena shows. It feels less intimate. It feels more of like I'm watching a movie type thing. Given I haven't been to very many comedy shows, so I don't know like what other stand-up comedians do and how that feels. But the ones that I have been to, it's, Hassan or sort of this more intimate comedy club vibe, which, by the way, I love the comedy club. I really want to go back at some point. Nimesh was awesome, though. The show was a lot of fun, but he basically blew up because I guess during the pandemic, he found this sort of app he found the app, which I use, called TikTok, and sort of started posting clips. You've probably seen him on TikTok if you're Indian. His Finding Nimesh is his handle, and he posts a lot of funny stand-up stuff that he's been doing throughout sort of this last year. And it's, a couple of those bits have caught heat and sort of, has allowed him to create his own tour, which is amazing. And Nimesh has done a special on YouTube, actually. It was about healthcare and doctors and all of that, and it's absolutely necessary. Like, you have to go check that out. A lot of comedians are going down this path of like YouTube specials and all of this stuff, and it's really, really fun to watch all of these guys like do amazing things and stand up, and I'm rooting for all of them. Scholes, Akash, Nimesh, like these guys are awesome. They're super dope. And I really like seeing these independent specials released on YouTube, released on people's own, rather than through big companies like HBO and Netflix, who can theoretically like censor what you're saying. So this is really cool to see these guys just kind of go through and sort of say whatever it is they want to say, like by themselves. Like, I think that's sick. I think that's lit. And so and kind of put it on their own platform, and it's under their own name, and they make all the royalties and all that stuff. So that's awesome, and that can lead you to getting towards. This is why I love social media and YouTube, and I think it's definitely, I'm very pro this type of stuff for sure. Yeah, but yeah, YouTube comedy, man. I think this is absolutely the future, and obviously you're seeing a lot more of this stand-up TikToks, comedy TikTok moving to these social platforms, building through here. I mean, we talked about other guys too, like Trevor Wallace and Tatro, who built themselves through sort of skits. But I'd say Jimmy Tatro is more of the traditional route of like, doing a little bit of skits and then transitioning that into an acting career. But actual traditional stand-up moving to YouTube and TikTok and all these social media platforms is totally happening, and we have to acknowledge that, which is amazing. And I think all of these kind of creative crafts are going to move in the social media direction, which is very cool. And I'm just super excited to kind of see where it all ends up at the end of the day. I'm very, very excited, and I cannot wait to see where this all goes.